Mario Kart has had its fair share of tracks across the games. Many of these became mainstays and adored by Nintendo and its community, while some, let's just say they got locked in Miyamoto's basement in 1999 and we haven't heard from them since. Anyways, in this video, I'm going to be talking about the 5 most forgotten tracks within Mario Kart, starting at the origins of forgotten tracks themselves. Mario Circuit 4 from Super Mario Kart. Now, I feel like this track doesn't need any introduction to you guys, the players, but Nintendo honestly have straight up forgotten half the tracks from Super Mario Kart, this one being the primary victim. Super Mario Kart, released in 1992, had 20 all-original tracks. Well, when I say all-original, I mean they got 8 themes and basically cloned them a few times. This was no different within the Mario Circuit tracks, which were introduced as a reference to a typical racetrack setting, as an area to get the racers introduced to the game and to the physics. Super Mario Kart really went overboard with the circuit tracks and added a whopping 4 of them across the 20 tracks, with Mario Circuit 3 and 4 being in the later half of the game, despite the boring atmosphere. When it came to later installments, these tracks were commonly brought back as starters, however not in fair distribution. I think the best way to describe the relationship between each of these 4 tracks is by comparing them as brothers. We firstly had Mario Circuit 4, which was Nintendo's older golden child. They may be a basic bitch, but Nintendo sees them perfect and as a result brought them back as the first ever retro track for the series. Now Mario Circuit 2 was the middle child of the family, often forgotten, but through his teenage years he got quite the glow up with Mario Kart 7, where they revolutionised gaming as a whole by changing this boost ramp into, wait for it, a glider ramp. This track is seen positively by the community, but being sandwiched between 1 and 3 gives it a lack of identity at times. Mario Circuit 3 is the absolutely spoiled younger child that everyone secretly hates. Except its parents at Nintendo, of course. I mean, this track has nothing really going for it, yet it's appeared in Super Mario Kart Super Circuit, Mario Kart Wii, Mario Kart Tour, and Mario Kart 8's Booster Course Pass. This track is literally the William Afton of FNAF tracks. The community tried to burn it multiple times, but it just rises from the rubble unscathed and the same as ever. And Mario Circuit 4 is the youngest child in reality, but it's the child that Nintendo thought mysteriously disappeared in their vacation to Australia, and they never questioned it since. I mean, this track hasn't returned in any game past Super Mario Kart and Super Circuit if you count it, which shows Nintendo just doesn't care, especially when Mario Circuit 3 has returned like 17.5 times already. Overall, their track just suffered from being basemented, which is no different to our second track in this list, being 64 Wario Stadium. Now, where do I start? I could do the whole funny bit like I did from the Mario Kart prediction video, which you should go watch and like, but that'll get slightly repetitive, so I want to just highlight just how rare it is for this track to not have returned. Every game in the series, up to this point, has had at least 2 tracks not brought back as a retro, but Wario Stadium is the only exception, even considering tracks from Super Mario Kart. This is even funnier when you see the future games in the series, Waluigi Stadium in Double Dash and Wario Stadium in DS. Yes, that's right, they straight up replaced it. And what makes it worse is both of these sussy Big Chungus imposter tracks actually returned as retros, while the original hasn't. Maybe it's because of a lower lap count or its extreme length, or the fact I'd rather stick my head into a fishbowl to see if I grow gills than play this track, but that's not really important. Moving on to a quite recent installment, being Mario Kart 7. Well, recent if you count that Mario Kart 8's been out for like over 10 years, but oh well. And we actually have a pair of tracks here, Maka Woohoo and Woohoo Loop. I feel like any collaboration track could have took this spot, but the Wii Sport tracks have just been out a little longer. These tracks are really no joke, being one of the first examples of how section tracks can be used effectively. Something Tour didn't learn from, but we'll come back to that, to having ample uses of both water and glider aspects, the 2 new fun features. So why do I consider these 2 tracks to be among the most forgotten that Wario Stadium and Mario Circuit 4 have had to suffer? Well, honestly, I've already answered this. The collabs. I know it's a little bit of a stretch calling a series made by Nintendo a collab when they got added to a game by Nintendo, but that's their mindset. Since it's not strictly 100% Mario Kart IP, I believe these tracks will get the Wario Stadium treatment. We already know how Nintendo treats somewhat unofficial content. Anyway, we can look back on this in 2197 to see if the tracks actually return or not. Also, side note, kind of just cutting in out of a script, But I also just want to mention how they completely ditched Wii Sports for Switch Sports and completely removed VIP. That is a pretty good indicator that they don't care about that set of like IP anymore. So it probably will end up getting forgotten in time. But we'll see how it goes. Moving on. Track 4 out of 5 on the list is probably the most different in terms of forgottenness out of the tracks in this list. This one I wouldn't say is forgotten by Nintendo or anything, but it's so easy as a player to forget it exists. I'll give you 3 hints to guess it before I reveal the track. So hint number 1, this track was in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe's Booster Course Pass. Hint number 2, this track was originally from Mario Kart Tour. And hint 3, this track was added in the very first wave of the Booster Course tracks. So did you get it? If you said Paris Promenade, you would be wrong, because it was Tokyo Blur. Yeah, no one actually remembers it. Like, who actually enjoys this track? When I think of Wave 1 of Mario Kart 8's Booster Course Pass, I often think about how I loathed the Sky Garden revamp, or how I hated the Choco mounting changes, or how I disliked the cars not moving in Coconut Mall. Basically, Tokyo Blur did nothing inherently wrong, it just didn't do anything worth playing it. This track was probably as simplistic as you'll get for a section track, with practically no enemies and a lackluster layout. At least you can say the name is accurate, as it just feels like one big blur. For being Nintendo's resident city, you'd have thought they'd put some more detail into this track specifically, but I guess not. For my final choice of track, we have Piranha Plant Pipeline from Mario Kart Tour. This track hasn't even existed for a year as of making this video, but it's already become the child who was kicked out at a young age and got into drugs. Now this track not being added into Mario Kart 8 was both surprising and not at all at the same time. We know the main reason that all the tracks from the Booster Course Pass came to Mario Kart 8 to begin with was due to Mario Kart Tour eventually having to shut down its servers and losing the tracks forever. That's why many of them are unchanged from the Tour versions, except for like being expanded and things like that. But with Piranha Plant Pipeline not coming to Mario Kart 8's Booster Course Pass, that means that this track has no way of being preserved if Mario Kart Tour gets shut down. Unless it comes back in a future game, this track may just be lost to time. With there being 3 tracks with basically the same theme now anyway, it doesn't really matter. So maybe this is a choice by Nintendo, which is kind of a weird choice since they've added this track fairly recently to Mario Kart Tour, but it might be a choice from them either way. That is the 5 most forgotten tracks in Mario Kart. Did I miss any? Do you think that Coconut Mall's not talked about enough? I think it definitely is one of the most forgotten tracks in the series personally. Let me know your thoughts, like and subscribe, and comment down below what other videos I should do. I have got a lot in store. I've just been very busy with life, and I have a second channel, and I have a lot of things going on right now. So that is the gist of it. Just subscribe, please. I need subscribers. Subscribe!